Maia, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Where do I start? We go back a long way. I think we've both progressed quite far from working in a windowless, heatingless building in Linfield Sports.
I think we used to refer to it as the dungeon. That's what it was called, eh? Under the stands at the Cuthbert's Green.
Cuthbert's Green. Oh, good times. Good times. We both cut our teeth in coaching and administration and clubland, and it was a fun time, and enjoyed working with you every minute. It's good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Last time we chatted, I was actually trying to recruit you over here to Melbourne Victory for one of our roles within our A-League setup, but unfortunately missed out to a head coaching role and a girls pro development role at your current club in Western Springs in Auckland. So a little bit gutted with that, but really pleased to see how you've made a good positive start at the club, and obviously taking home a trophy not that long ago was a great success. But just for the listeners, some context. So it's quite a unique situation where the club went through a bit of a solidarity, I guess, of their previous coach, who stood up for the players in terms of some equality around facilities and access and other sort of bits and pieces within the club. And it was a national news in New Zealand for a bit of time, and the then coach ended up leaving, and there was a period of time where there was no coach in place, and then they obviously went through a recruitment process, and in you came. So that's not normal. That's not common practice. I've certainly never experienced that. What was that like as a still relatively new coach with those sort of circumstances to come into the building? How did you approach it on day one or session one, and then how did that kind of morph over the back end of the season?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think firstly, as I was actually really intentional about the role that I took, I was in a bit of a space in my life where I was kind of figuring out what it was, what I wanted for my next step. And this role kind of happened. Obviously, I'd seen what was happening in the papers, and I knew a few of the girls, knew a couple of people within the club as well, and kind of had a few different insights from different perspectives. And I think I was at a place in my career where I wanted something different to challenge me. I wanted to be a head coach again. I knew that much. But I also really actually looked forward to the idea of taking a team mid-season, and also B, taking a team that's in a little bit of turmoil or a point of challenge in their season. The players themselves, they could have gone in many different directions and all left and gone to different clubs. There could have been no women's team. But I think once they got through the mediation is kind of when I came on board. And from that point on, I could actually really get a sense of the fact that the team was so connected because of what they'd been through is actually a strength. It's kind of mirrored with my strengths, where I wanted to repair relationships, rebuild that trust between the players and the club. And I think they worked into my strengths as well. So I kind of wanted that challenge, and I was very intentional about going and getting it. I think sometimes that sort of progress can be slow. Like, when people are hurt, it does take a little bit of extra care sometimes. But for me, I just started with getting to know the players, getting to know the club. There are some really good people within the club that really care about it and care about the players as well. And the players were really quite involved in wanting to do really well and make a stand for the right reasons, but also play some good football. And now that they've got kind of what they were after, actually going out and put on a bit of a performance, which we're able to do in the Kate Shepherd Cup and winning that, and then going into National League with some pretty strong performances as well, and some individual accolades along the way. So pretty happy with how the first few months have turned out, but I think we've got bigger fish to fry next year, and preparation's already begun.
Yeah, brilliant. I guess in terms of like self-reflecting back, you've gone through a bit of a challenge and experience. Is there anything you can think of that you would do differently if you had your time again? Because I guess a part of the message for this sort of podcast is for players and coaches and athletes to sort of learn from other people's experience and not necessarily make the same mistakes or find the little tips and tricks. So I'm really keen to find out, not necessarily the mistakes that you made, but how you would do things differently to get a more positive reaction, or things that you, if you want to look at the other way, what were the things that you nailed that got the positive reaction that you would, certainly stress for someone like myself going through something similar?
Yeah, I think the things that I nailed was I just stayed true to who I was as a coach. And like, I think just doing the extra little things that, around the Kate Shepherd Cup final, where I basically got a lot of support on board through the club, where we had a lot of the junior club come out and actually like see us off. We had a team breakfast at the club, which the club put on. The team bus arrived. We had all these junior players basically clapping us out onto the bus, in their Springs kit. It was quite a cool event, actually, where the players really felt supported walking onto that bus. They had a big old, flags and that sort of stuff set up, and face painting at the stadium, that sort of thing. So there was kind of a big wraparound support around the girls, and I think that was really big in repairing a lot of those relationships and feeling like we were backed by the club as a team. I think second to that was going into National League. I probably should have got more support in around me. The assistant coach would kind of been the coach throughout that transition phase. Caleb, he was fantastic through that transition phase, and he kind of stepped into the assistant coach role through the National League, as well as being under 18s head coach of that girls National League program. It's probably just a bit too much, where I was trying to do lots of different things and try and give him the ability to go and really take on that under 18s role at the same time. So I think I just probably was doing a little bit too much there on grass and not able to, maybe to step out and kind of see it from a bigger picture lens at times, because I was just kind of going and kind of on the treadmill, if you will. So I think that's probably one of my reflections on that, is really go in and ask for support. Sometimes it's kind of hard to know who to ask for support when you're new to an organisation. It's kind of one of those where you're still figuring out who you can trust or who you need to go to for certain things, but I think just kind of trusting my gut in those moments probably would have helped me along the way.
Yeah, brilliant. What an incredible experience to go through, certainly as a younger coach as well. And no doubt it's made you a better coach, probably a better administrator along the lines as well. So, yeah, thanks for sharing that. I'm really excited to have you on the pod to speak through the lens of a coach. You're working with athletes, and you've had a lot of experience with athletes overseas in Holland and Canada, and even in New Zealand with the Wellington Phoenix, of working with athletes just before the performance phase or high performance phase. So talented athletes in their own right, transitioning towards that senior international or senior professional environment, consistent performance. So we're talking about athletes of various codes who've shown quality over a number of years, and trying to make and bridge that gap between where they are and where they really want to get to. That's a really tricky step to make. So speaking through the lens as a coach, what advice do you have speaking directly to athletes who are in that kind of pre-performance phase?
Yeah, if you're an athlete, I think the biggest thing I'd have to say is you must understand yourself first. And like, if you're a 14-year-old, 15-year-old athlete, I don't expect you to have a full picture of who you are and your whole life mapped out and that sort of thing. That's kind of not what I'm after. But like, as a coach, I'm looking at, do you as an athlete know what your strengths are? What do you bring to a team? Where do you actually need support sometimes? When do you sometimes struggle? Where do you go to get support? Like, is it actually go and talk to mum and dad? Is it, you go and talk to your teammates, a senior player? Do you have the confidence to go and talk to a senior player potentially? What is it that you need to get to be stretched? And kind of what's going to help you kind of kick on to that next phase. So having some idea around kind of who you are first, and a strong sense of self, I think, is probably one of the biggest things. But that also generally that next step can mean not just in terms of a football step, but it's potentially like a lifelong step as well. So you're kind of thinking about, okay, what do I need around my football to succeed? So let's say I'm a young player in New Zealand. Now for my next step, I probably need to head overseas. I need to head abroad and go and find a different pathway, or kind of starting to get into the professional game, or whatever else it might be. So you're not only thinking about a football decision at this point, you're thinking about, how can I place myself into a place of living where I feel really comfortable and safe? where I have, enough money to make ends meet. I can put food on the table. I can look after myself as an athlete. It's in a place where I'm going to feel comfortable going out and, enjoying myself on the weekend, going down to, to the riverside or going down to the beach or something, having a place where I can still enjoy myself. Because it can be really tough taking that next step in your football career. It can kind of get to the place where you might be in a reserve team bouncing around and you really want to be in that first team, not quite cracking into the minutes that you want to. So you've got to have those things in your life which are going to help you relax, going to help you be at your best and help you succeed off the field, which hopefully then helps you succeed on the field. So I think that's the first thing, is understanding yourself, understanding what you need kind of on your journey and who your support people are, which gives you that confidence as you go through that transition phase. I think the second thing I'd talk about is like really think about the practicalities. So ask questions. Ask as many questions as you possibly can. Talk to as many people as you possibly can. Ask about the system that you're walking into, the organisation. Can you get a different nationality? Can I get a passport that's a European passport so I get access into that potential pathway? What's the recruitment process like at this particular league or at this particular club? When are the right windows to go and try and target certain clubs or lean on them? Who are the leaders of the team? What are the coaches like? What's their playing style? Do I need to get an agent potentially to help me, navigate those contracts if I'm going into that pro game? And even little things like, again, what are the practicalities? We'll ask questions around what start dates, when do you want me there? Do I get to go home for the holidays? Do I not? So you're walking into it with eyes wide open. And sometimes it can be hard to know even what questions to ask. So going to speak to a player that's kind of been there and been through that transition is probably a really good idea. And hopefully recently, because it's kind of going to be the same problems that they walk into, that you might walk into as an athlete as well. And then last thing, so understand yourself, ask lots of questions, understand the practicalities of it. And the last one is around understanding that your journey is going to be different. So I know you might have played with your best mate since you were 4, and that's really cool that you've been able to experience that journey together, but understanding that everyone's developmental phases are different. You're going to, develop at different rates at different times. What you get out of one particular environment isn't necessarily going to be the best for your mate. Everyone matures physically at different rates. You take different learnings from different environments. It's all so different. So, and opportunities arrive when you least expect them sometimes. It might take an injury in the first team for you to get a crack and get a start, and that's your opportunity to go. It might be someone gets loaned out in a certain team. Okay, now there's an opportunity again. So just being ready, but also understanding your pathway might be different, your timing might be different, and it's all okay. If I think back to a bit of an example, so I've actually been to a visit PSV in PSV Eindhoven in Holland just in April, and they have the best reserve team across the country. I don't think they've lost a game in the space of last 3 years or something, and their players continue to get signed. Their top 10 or 11 players each year continue to get signed, and some of them will get signed by PSV, but some of them will actually have to go out and PSV will help them get signed at different clubs around Holland. And they've got quite a cool club model which allows them to actually, or supports them to go on and reach pro football, and they have an exit strategy for all those players. So when they're ready, they go and they find somewhere that's appropriate for that particular player. I think all of them dream of playing at PSV. They have all been through that pathway for the last couple of years, but at the same time, the PSV coaches and management will know when that time comes for that player. It may not always, it's not always going to be at PSV. They can't service all those players, but each year that academy, that reserve team is churning out, 10 or 11 new pros each year, which is pretty fantastic for the football scene in the Netherlands.
Yeah, that's an awesome story to share. Brilliant as well that your comment around your journey, your development cycle, however you want to describe it, is a very common thread amongst coaches I've speaking to. And that's, for me, that's common sense. For you, that's probably common sense. But for transitioning athletes, they may not generally believe that. So hopefully it's another person emphasizing that point. But the first point you made around the support network, for me, is a great one. You spoke about other players who've kind of gone through that mentor as a potential part of your support network. Obviously your coach, we'll get to that shortly, but the people around the club can help with that. the person or people most likely to be your biggest advocates, or these athletes' advocates, is your parents or your key guardian figures. So a key I guess desirable for me amongst bringing people like yourself to share some wisdom is to break down the barriers around coach and parent. Too often we almost dismiss the parents as, you guys stay over in the corner, I don't really know what you're talking about, let the coaches coach. But in all reality, the parents have, as much, probably even more vested interest in the success and the joy, and when things don't go so well, they're going to be there as well, unconditional love for these athletes. So I would like us as coaches to sort of bring those parents along the journey more than what we do. So hopefully this is helping break down those kind of barriers. So if you were speaking to again the parents of these players that we've just been speaking directly to, what's the advice as a coach to parents that you would offer around helping I guess that transition and to become more successful than potentially what we often see is kids with great talent don't make it for some reasons. That'll be sport specific, it'll be physical specific, might be mentality specific, but sometimes it's, as you said, the support network may not be there. So yeah, what advice do you have to parents in this space?
Yeah, first one is, as early as you can, pass over that responsibility of development to the player, to your child. That's my first port of call. Is they should be the one that's getting to training on time and making sure that you're training on time. They should be the one that are looking back through their clips after they've played their game on the weekend, if they have if they have access to video. They should be the ones that are thinking about the game or watching the game potentially away from the football pitch. It shouldn't necessarily be the parent driving that. So if you can kind of allow the child to really flourish in their own way and grow with it quite naturally, but the child be driving that development focus. If the coaches are having a one-on-one meeting with the players, or let the player ask the questions, or let the player, depending on their age, even just do the meeting themselves if they're ready for that sort of thing. I think the more responsibility that you can pass over to the player, I think the better it will be when they do go into that pro environment. Around that, I think also be close. I think it's okay to be part of that journey with your player, especially if they're starting to think about having to move cities or move countries potentially. If you've got a relationship with your child which is supportive, which is present but not overbearing and not driving that love of football, I think that's probably like the golden ticket for me, is finding that sweet spot where they know that they love you, they know that you're loved, regardless of how that football pathway works out, whether you do go pro or not, but that you're really supportive, reactive in that space, and you're doing whatever you can to make sure that they know that they're supported. It can be quite scary for a young player to have to move cities. For example, in New Zealand, we've only got one pathway, right? So at the moment, the pro pathway is through the Phoenix, which means it's a great opportunity for young girls to go down there to train 4 times a week, to get access to strength and conditioning and gym and all that sort of stuff. But it is a big change for girls that aren't from Wellington to have to make that move. So you're thinking about what's their nutrition like? Are they able to cook dinners for themselves, or are they at a place where it's at a homestay that's their first year, kind of, and that just giving a wee taste of living away from home, but having a family around them, having that support network. Does that support network understand the demands of high performance sport? Getting to know that family pretty well and having a good relationship with that family. So again, your child's happy and safe and looked after at home, if you can't be there. But I guess for me, it's also where, especially with female athletes, and it's kind of the background that I've got, that can be an area where female players do get quite stressed out, especially if they're working alongside their football, ambitions, or if they're, studying alongside their football ambitions, which is quite normal. It can be a real time of stress. So just your child best. I mean, they probably know themselves best as well, but next to that would be your parents. So look for any indicators that either they're not enjoying their football as much, over across a period of time, they're starting to get a little bit lethargic, or you can look for some signs there and potentially reach out for help if need be. But yeah, I guess close, but not necessarily driving that love of football. Is kind of how I describe it.
Yeah, brilliant. Like too often, not too often, well, maybe my opinion, too often we see helicopter parents where they're living the game vicariously through their kids, and to the detriment of not only the kids' joy, but I think the kids' development in their chosen sport. So I think helicoptering is important where you're worried about the safety and the engagement of son or daughter in any chosen sport. But your point there around trying to take a backward step approach at the right age to allow the athlete to develop those own responsibilities and behaviors and traits and characteristics that are critical for a self-independent athlete, whether that's at home or abroad. So trying to help them on that journey, let the kids fail and help be there when they need an arm around the shoulder, but also they need to fall over and experience that that hurt, albeit temporarily, but that's how we grow. What about speaking to coaches now? So remove yourself from your role. What advice are you going to give to yourself or other coaches who are working with these athletes that are trying to transition through your experiences as a coach?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I had to say is just individualize it, work out what that player needs and find a way to give it to them. That for me is probably the biggest thing. So again, I'll use an example. So when I was at the White Caps, Jordan Heitema and Julia Grosso were at the academy, the girls' elite program with the Vancouver White Caps. Now Jordan got signed direct from the academy into the PSG women's first team, Champions League football, like kind of crazy for an 18-year-old to go off and do that straight away. Julia Grosso went through the university through Texas. That was kind of her pathway, and then now she's at Juventus. They were both starting matches for Canada at the World Cup just been. So pretty exciting that that's kind of been their journey. But if we think back to their time at the academy, Jordan was more of a physical beast. So she was 6 foot tall. She was fast. She was able to physically she could run down anyone. She'd break beyond. That's how she scored her goals. And she was quite direct. She had an eye for goal. Even at the age of 14, she was playing, under 17s, under 20s Canada stuff. She was always going to go on and play for Canada, no matter what we did, no matter how we developed her. And saying that, what we did is we gave her some minutes to go and train with in some practices where we sent her to the mixed environment, or the boys' environment, boys' academy, where the speed of play was a little bit different. It was a little bit faster. She had to kind of work on her first touch a little bit more to keep it a little bit closer to her, especially as a 9, dealing with that pressure from behind. Again, just kind of trying to raise her level of those particular skill sets. That's what she needed in that last kind of cycle, that last year of her training. Julia Grosso, for example, was a complete opposite. She came in very technically gifted, excelled in those areas. We kind of had scoring, which was, gold medal, silver medal, bronze medal. And Julia would hit all of the golds and the tactical elements as well. Like, she's a very clever player, could see the game really well. But physically, she was not even hitting bronze. So what we did with her was get her into a gym program. We got, S&C around it. We're lucky enough to have great resource in that particular environment. And she went from being not even a bronze to being almost gold across every physical corner, which was crazy. So, we're talking about speed, talking about power, talking about aerobic capacity or anaerobic capacity. Like, she was almost hitting gold in every corner in the space of 12 months. So I guess if we'd have given Jordan what Julia got, I don't think she would be the player that she is now. Or if we had given Julia what Jordan got, again, she wouldn't have hit the heights that she's now at in Juventus. So I think thinking of every player as an individual, what is it that they need? How can we provide it to them in the best way possible? And then also understand that might change. We actually needed to change Julia's programming because she was adapting so quickly to it. So we had to keep going. Okay, what's next? What's next? So I think that was a pretty cool moment in my time, and just to draw from my experiences of like what do each player need now going forward into either the New Zealand under-20s or that next step for them.
It's an interesting topic. We're talking about, so in our context, it's football, but it could be, an individual sport. But talking about using the team as almost the tool to allow us to develop and refine my part of the team game. So as a fullback, I need to be really good as a fullback. challenge as a coach who's working in this space is, yeah, we need to have the team structure and organized, but how much time do we invest in putting into team culture, team tactics, where we, if it's about only helping one or two transition from, say, the New Zealand 20s to the football ferns, yeah, we want the team to do okay, but actually my remit's not for the team to win, it's how many players can I successfully bring through my journey. It takes a special type of coach to block out the noise around the team results in order to focus or allow the individual growth to really shine through. And my advice to coaches before you get into coaching a team sport is, what potentially would apply to individual coaches, where do I want to be on this journey? Don't say I want to be in the this high performance athlete development phase if you're not serious about developing the athlete more so than the team. Go and focus on maybe further down, but where team becomes the priority, not developing these athletes. The other point you sort of said in the first part to athletes is know yourself, know your profile, know your strengths, know your weaknesses, your gaps, and then obviously you compare that mentality of the player and a coach who's there to help bring that athlete through on their journey. You got a good combination. I think where that combination has differing opinions or philosophies, then I think we see a stalling in the individual growth, even though it might be a team sport. And that's where the support network, mum and dad predominantly, can help ensure that there's alignment between the environment I'm choosing to go into and I guess the plan to help bring me on that journey. What about yourself, Maia? So you're a coach who's still relatively young, or still very young, experienced a lot of different environments overseas, professional, amateur. And I know you have aspirations of coaching at the high performance elite level. What are the things that if you look back on your journey, you've kind of felt, I'm doing this really well, this is helping me take each step forward rather than backwards? Or have you thought about what areas maybe you haven't explored that you might go and try and look at in the next couple of years to help you on your journey as a coach through to the high performance phase?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think I've kind of always got in the back of my mind, I love learning. So that for me is like I'm a continuous learner. I will never stop learning from, the day that I've started coaching, that coastal spirit under 12 girls team that didn't even play in the first division. Like that was my first team that I ever took. I've just learned and learned and learned and learned and learned throughout my entire career. And I've been lucky to have some really different experiences and to have, some different people around me, the likes of Bev Priestman and Emma Humphreys and Nat Lawrence over in Canada. Like that was massive to my learning and development as a coach. I think for me, like I almost intentionally have put myself into different environments. Like I went over to Holland, the Netherlands, seeking something different from the New Zealand football coach education, New Zealand football pathway. Like I'd already been a part of FTCs for a few years, been a part of NTCs for a couple of years. Like for me, I felt like I was at a pretty good place. I kind of knew that I wasn't a master of it, but I knew enough from that space. I was ready for something different. Really go and learn and really truly understand what it means, the Dutch model of football, how we play it, how they coach it, how they train it. Yes, it's culturally quite different to New Zealand. So could I drop that from there straight into New Zealand? Like, no, there's some contexts that are different. But for me, I'd absorbed as much as I possibly can, not just from the coaches, but the culture, like how they have these big like round table meetings where everyone had these conversations and were allowed to have the input and everyone's voice was valued within those conversations, but there'd always be some sort of outcome, decision made, and they'd go on and like their application to that was really, really strong. So that for me was quite different to maybe how things were in New Zealand, but I quite enjoyed it. And it was quite robust and honest conversations. And there were things I was going, oh, this is what, this wouldn't normally happen in New Zealand, but it's good for my learning. There's no actually that's, senior football can be quite hard sometimes. It's okay to be honest with each other. And I think my Dutch blood actually really loves that honesty. I think, in terms of myself, I have really intentionally gone and put myself in different situations. When the opportunity came to go to Canada, I didn't even think twice. Like I loved Holland. I loved living there. Could have seen myself here for years, but I knew that going and coaching professionally in a professional club and the academy was something that I really needed to do for me and to work around those great minds that I did. And it really, I think over there taught me the real meticulous detail that someone like a John Herdman has, especially back then. I think he's got slightly less rigid in his approach, but was just the level of detail was outrageous. Like they had every 20-minute block kind of locked in for the entire year. We knew exactly what we were doing in every 20-minute block of training, which is, to be fair, it's probably a little bit too much. Like it probably went down the other end of the spectrum, but it taught me something really special. And I kind of learned to like bring that back to somewhere where I feel comfortable. But it taught me that element of planning, that element of like foresight, of research, science-based approach. And then coming back to New Zealand's almost been that exposure to me is like, okay, now I get to go and trial it out with Capital Football. Got to go and trial it out being a head coach and seeing how I go as myself. Dropped into the professional game as more of like an analyst, but being around that scene again, what can I learn from it? What can I take away from it? How can I impact from my place? Even though I was the analyst, I was out there doing individual sessions with Paige Satchel and Millie Clegg and those sorts of players. I was leading the cultural part of the team at that point, and I loved it. But again, that was part of my skill set that I'd learned from, I guess, all of my experiences in Holland and Canada, but also Te Hāpaitanga, which was a scholarship program that I've been on with High Performance Sport in New Zealand. I'd really try to take those learnings and apply them. So like for me, I don't know, I'm just a continuous learner. I love learning things, but I also love applying it, seeing how it goes, test it out, and try it out again in a different way potentially.
Yeah, fantastic advice, and that will serve everybody, myself included, yourself included, over the next however many years. There's always new things to learn, right? I think New Zealand and maybe to a lesser degree, but still here in Australia, I think the environments around sport, the landscape, the governing bodies are so open to being able to go and connect and speak with people of other codes. So you don't necessarily have to go to Europe. I learned a lot from being around workshops and speaking with people over a coffee. And people are pretty. It only costs me a coffee to go and speak to somebody for an hour most of the time. It's pretty cheap hour worth of wisdom and asking some questions. But I think people are pretty prepared to open the doors up, especially if it's from a different code where they don't feel as threatened about losing the secret sauce, so to speak. But helping other people in other codes drive the game forward. So I'm a big advocate of going and seeking, getting outside of my bubble and going and looking at other sports. I really enjoy watching hockey. Sports both are rectangular, both have a goal we're trying to invade and stop evasion. A lot of similarities. There's similar number of players in the field. There's slight variances, the offside rule, for example. But what training sessions are the hockey coaches working on in order to combine and break down and get through a group of players to beat a goalkeeper? Well, it's exactly the same as football. So how can we go and look at something different, go and ask some questions? You can't necessarily pick it up, copy and paste it and drop it in, but you can certainly extract things that could be applicable. And as you said, test it out, try it out. Doesn't work, maybe we've got to tweak it. Doesn't work at all, okay, that one didn't work. It worked, brilliant, let's keep that. How do we evolve that to go from strength to strength? So brilliant. Hey, appreciate the conversation so far. Got a few quick fire questions. I want to without digging too much into the detail, just want to see what comes to mind and help the audience with some of these things. So firstly, I've been posing a question at the start of every week. So can you ask me a question, but also the people listening to maybe ponder on this week? So what's this week's question?
My question for you guys would be, how do you contribute to your team, your workplace, your family? Like, what sort of impact have you had in their lives or their experiences with you this week?
Yeah, that's great. And that's just makes us stop and actually think. And you get so caught up in the day-to-day and the next task. And yeah, that's a great question. So thanks for that. What about one concept or idea that you're currently kind of testing or exploring or have kind of learnt through your travels that you'd like to share?
One concept that I've really loved just come in the last couple of months was gratitude by Ruby Tui. Have you heard of gratitude?
Is that her book?
It's not her book, no, but it's essentially it's like a concept where like you can be really grateful for something. So let's say you're grateful towards a certain person, or you're grateful, let's say it's your mum, for example, really grateful for your mum. And I think as you get older, you start to have these experiences, right, where you think, well, my parents really did a lot for me as a kid. Let's say I'm really grateful for my mum. Gratitude is where you're not just grateful for it, but you actually go out and do something of action about it. So you might, I don't know, give her a phone call, and even if it's 5 minutes, give her a phone call. Hey, mum, how you doing? What's happening with your day? Whatever it might be. Could be something a little bit more indirect, where you might go and, I don't know, let's say write a card to one of her sisters, or I don't know, someone that's might be in hospital or something like that, where it's not necessarily going to impact her directly, but gratitude is kind of where you actually go and act out that gratefulness that you've got for something or someone.
That's awesome. I love that. That's so cool. Definitely going to start to apply some of that in my life. Nice. Can you recommend a book or podcast, a TV series maybe, around, again, this coach or athlete or parent kind of connection that you think would be valuable for people to go and consume?
This one's certainly one more for probably the coaches, but definitely like anyone, because it kind of connects with how you connect with the world. But Belonging by Owen Eastwood, which is a book. Yep. I believe you would have read it. You would have been familiar with it. For me, I just found that really kind of quite pivotal at the moment that I was kind of challenging those thoughts already. And really loved the book. Would go and recommend to anyone. Yeah,
I double down on that. So Owen, sports psychologist, lawyer initially by trade, Kiwi, very humble man, has worked with the New Zealand senior men's and women's football teams and many teams overseas. He worked with the England football team as well, with Gareth Southgate before the major tournament. I think the Proteas cricket club, national team, South African men's national team as well. So very highly regarded, but a lot of good learnings. I was actually walked past our senior men's head coach, Tony Popovich, last year, and I noticed that he had that book on his desk. This was between seasons, so he was obviously reading that through the off season, looking for some wisdom as well. So great book. Go get that. It's called Belonging by Owen Eastwood. What about if you had a magic wand and you could wave it away, and one thing would change about either the sport or the system or a process that you are confronted by or have to operate within to make your sport, I guess, a better place? What would you want?
Yeah, I love the question. I think for me it would just be reducing the politics, like reducing the thought that just because a player has played at your club that they almost owe you something or they belong to you as a club. For me, I'm always looking at, like, if this player is a good player, they shouldn't necessarily be at our club by the next year or the year after. I'm always looking for that exit point of, we want you to go. We want you to go and go and experience these different learnings in your life. And I think that's, for me, is if I can wave a magic wand, it's actually saying to parents and being really open and transparent and saying, hey, look, this is what we can offer you. We cannot offer you everything. If you need that somewhere else, go and find that. And that's cool. Like, I think offering that up and being really honest about that process and that pathway, and then hopefully that kind of comes back in return, and other coaches can be really honest with their players as well. It can kind of be like the players can be a bit more fluid to try out what they need for themselves. That for me would be like a utopia, I guess, where players can be comfortable, find what works for them, because every coach doesn't work with every single player, doesn't always have the same connection or whatever it might be. So hopefully parents and players can go find it out for themselves.
Speaking as a true HPAD tiered coach, great answer. What about one piece of advice that you were given by somebody through your journey that is still relevant for you today?
Test what you know. Because you'll also find out you don't know. I think for me, like, so when I was, and I think it was year 12 or year 13 at school, I was getting really stressed because we had these mock exams coming up and I hadn't had time to study. I was trying to, playing a lot of football, that sort of stuff. And Mum just said to me, she's like, well, what do you need to study for? Just turn up to the exam and just do the exam, find out what you know. And what you don't know, that's what you'll study for when you go into the final exam at the end of the year. And I said, Mum, you're a genius. Like, for me, just took all the stress away. Like, just test out what you know, figure out what you don't know, and go and, then go and do that. But unless you test it, unless you actually go out there and actively do something you're kind of stuck in this lull of not really knowing what you know, or not really knowing what you don't know. That's, for me, is a good old mum piece of advice, that one.
Mums are great for that, aren't they? They're awesome.
Yeah.
And finally, leave us with a quote for the week.
So yeah, this quote, I guess, would be something from, I'm a little bit sentimental today. I'm not sure what it is, but from my my great auntie Evie. She's basically like my grandmother down in Christchurch, and she would write in every birthday card, "May the day be as special as you are." And initially, when I was a kid, I used to think, in every single birthday card, you can imagine how many years and how many, grandkids or whatever she had. Initially, as a kid, I thought it was a little bit warm and fuzzy. Yeah, she thinks I'm special, that sort of thing. But the more I kind of grew into my adulthood, the more I looked at it as it's actually up to me to go and make that day special, and to make other people's days special. So I guess that's my quote, is like, may the day be as special as you are. But I guess on reflection, it's more about, how do you make other people's days that special? How do you go and make your day special every day that you're kind of out there?
Hey Maia, it's been a pleasure. There's been a lot of great insights for athletes, for coaches, for parents, for me. For that, I thank you. Appreciate your time. Welcome to the pod, and looking forward to seeing the journey over the next 12 months with the next stage of evolution of the Western Springs women's team.
Brilliant. Thanks very much for having me. It's been nice to connect again. And yeah, if even one person takes one bit of advice or thoughts and runs with it, then I'm happy. So thanks very much for the invitation.
Thanks so much for sticking through to the end of this episode. It would mean the world to us if you could hit the like or share button, so we can get these amazing insights out to other like-minded coaches, athletes and parents. Cheers.